I would say I'm waffling a little bit about where I am in my faith and will it return. I don't feel it right now. I'll be honest with you. I don't feel it. Um, a little bit. I'm a little detached from those things that I've told you have absolutely lent structure and discipline to my life. And right now I am definitely floating out there.
Welcome in to Menfolk Journeys, the podcast of great conversations with men. I'm your host, Chris Foster, and we're going to explore how we wear this beautiful and confusing mantle of manhood in the 21st century. Look, I get it. In public life, a lot of men are knuckleheads. But in private life, we can be thoughtful and we can be reflective if we have the right conversation, if we feel comfortable talking about our story. And we all have a great story to tell. And we can all learn from those stories. We can learn about who we've been, who we are, and who we want to be. And that's why we're going to have this conversation, so we can learn from other men just like us. And in this episode, we're going to talk with my friend Doug. Doug has lived in the Midwest for most all his life. He took a little stint in Colorado where it felt like that was the place for him. But the magnet draw of family and community and the place he grew up was just so strong that it pulled him back right into the heartland in Indiana. And he stayed, and he made a decision to be with his community. And now it's interesting. He's a little bit older, thinking a little bit more, and wondering the differences of how he and his community are looking at life. It's a wonderful conversation. I hope you enjoy it. Welcome in to Menfolk Journeys. Well, okay, looking forward to this. Doug Bogner, welcome in.
Oh, thanks, Chris. I'm thrilled to be here.
Why don't you tell us a bit about yourself?
Let's see. Live in Indianapolis. Was my wife. My daughter's in college, 19. We reluctantly, or at least for my part, reluctantly added a cat to our house this summer. Having a 1.5-year-old Australian Shepherd, so it's like having two toddlers running around.
Right. So you're in Indianapolis, and Am I correct that you've been in Indiana or at least the Midwest your whole life?
Not my entire life. So my mid-30s moved to Colorado Springs. I lived in Colorado Springs for 6 years. Loved it. But my daughter was 2.5, and we wanted to get closer to family. My wife's from Indiana as well. So the company I was with at the time allowed me to move to Indianapolis. So we got back here. The plan is to end up on the Front Range or in the mountains someplace, but you know how plans go.
You know how plans go, because plans go the way of life, and life sometimes interferes with plans. It was an interesting choice that your family made to move back to where there's greater family support. Did you think that helped when, as you were going through a family of your own, to have your folks and her folks around?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was the driving force for us getting back to the Midwest. My wife's family is about 2 hours up the road, and my family is about 2.5. So when we get to the northern part of the state, they're all up there. So it's, we went through a couple of years of, my daughter seeing her grandparents and her aunts and uncles, once or twice a year. And I saw my grandparents and my aunts and uncles and 68 cousins once or twice a week. So
right.
Just did not grow up that way. So yeah, it was, that was what we wanted. We made the conscious decision to move back for that. It was hard to leave Colorado. It's a great place to live.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's an interesting choice you make, right? The quality of the living life you want to have versus the safety net of a family. And as you grew up, you just mentioned that, you're 68 cousins, maybe there's more, I don't know. But the idea that there's this family around you when you were growing up, did you feel like there was this secure safety group of people that could help you through times of trouble and throughout your whole life?
Absolutely. Yeah. My
Hmm.
my my parents are both from big Catholic families. My mom's 100% Polish. My dad's 100% Hungarian, and their parents both immigrated to the U.S. As a matter of fact, out of my four grandparents, only one of them spoke English. My dad's mother spoke English.
Wow.
So for me, and like I and maybe I said 68, but I literally have 63 first cousins, with
Wow.
both sides of the family counted. So
Wow.
my best friends and everything that my life centered around growing up, at least until high school, was my cousins.
Sure. Now, do
Um,
you still keep in touch? Are you
we
close with
really
them?
don't. We really
Hmm.
don't. It's really sad that we've scattered. Um, it was interesting though. This past spring, one of my dad's brothers passed away, so that side of the family sort of reconstituted itself for the first time in a long time. People came from all over the country, and we all caught up. We were meeting each other's kids and things, and it was really great. It was really great,
Hmm.
um, and it really was for me. I missed it. I really missed it, and I miss all those people. So, um, yeah, you said it earlier. Life happens, and people go different ways, and I guess
Yeah.
that's what happened to us.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I think extended families have to work really hard to stay connected because you go into your own life. We had a smaller family where my dad was one of, I think, five, and his siblings had kids, but we were geographically a little bit removed. So we lived in Pittsburgh in the area, and my cousins, a lot of them were in New Hampshire area, so we would see them in the summertime.
Hmm.
But it was rare. And there were actually some cousins that I've seen them on large family gatherings, but honestly, I've seen a couple of my cousins 2, 3 times my whole life, right? Because the age difference and the fact that they were living their own lives and we just never connected. And it's an interesting thing where, even, my wife's family is even smaller than mine. So the idea of this extended family wasn't something that we grew up with. Like we weren't like in with uncles and cousins and in the mix of our daily
Yeah.
life. Like it was always kind of a rare thing for us to do, and it was an intentional gathering. So when we started our family out here in San Diego, we didn't have anybody here in
Right.
San Diego, and we chose San Diego.
Good choice,
Well,
by the way. Well done.
well, but it's I mean, pros and cons, right? So we didn't
Right.
have uncles, we didn't have grandparents around. So for years and years and years, my wife and I never traveled, right? Because we
Yeah.
didn't have any quote unquote support
Yeah.
to be here, right? And so we knew that was a choice that we made, an intentional choice to be in San Diego. But at San Diego, her folks were in Oregon, my mom was in Virginia, my dad was in Pittsburgh, my brother's in Philly, everyone's
Oh wow.
everywhere else,
Yeah.
right? And no one's nearby. And so my girls grew up without this net. They knew about it, but they didn't grow up with it. And
Yeah.
I think it changes how you look into life. When you said you were with your cousins, all 63 of them, and kind of bopping around through high school, that must have been, I don't know. I imagine that it created a sense of security and a sense of self and a sense of identity. At least you knew what tribe you belonged to. Is that fair?
Yeah. That's yeah. I would say so. I mean, we all had shared experiences. I have multiple cousins. Within my age range. Uh, the person I shared my locker with for 3 years in high school was my cousin. I mean, so it just made it, yeah, I guess it made it easy. If I needed if I really needed something, from a ride home to $5 for lunch because I forgot it, um, there was somebody with my last name that I could
Around.
call
Yeah.
and help me out. So, I'll give you a great example. I have a cousin who's in her 70s now and has had some real health challenges, and her home was kind of in disrepair, and so my brother's been working on it for like 3 weeks. I'm going up there this weekend, and I'm going to be helping
Sure.
him put in countertops and lay tile and do all kinds of stuff to help out my cousin
Yeah.
and get her back on her feet. So
That's great.
um, that's not a complaint, by the way. I just feel like, yeah, that's what you do.
It's not a complaint at all. In fact, I think it's an opportunity to give, right? I mean,
Yeah,
in today's fragmented world where many kids, quote unquote, leave the nest and families are living in different places, to have a family support, to have a village, to have a built-in tribe, I think is very rare. It's a fantastic thing. It also makes a lot of sense while you love Colorado, and maybe that's a place that speaks to you more than where you live now. The magnet and the gravity of where you are in Indiana with your family is just so strong, just pulls you in.
yeah. And let me say this. I mean, I don't mean I can't demean Indianapolis at all.
No.
It's a great town with terrible weather. I mean, it's just crappy weather. I'm
Right.
being kind.
Right.
I mean, it's the Midwest. It's
Right.
super humid in the winter or in the summertime. It's cold and icy and gray in the wintertime. I've never thought about those things, Chris. Trust me, I never thought about any of that stuff. It never bothered me until the last few years. I'm 59. I'm going to be 60 this summer, and I've got the old man disease where that kind of stuff is starting to get to me a little bit. And it's
The
like
discomfort and inconvenience of the weather.
Yeah, so stupid. I'm turning into a wuss at this old age. So,
That's hilarious.
but there's so much to do here, and Indianapolis has transformed itself into a great town with tons
Sure.
of things to do and great places to eat. And we have developed an incredible set of friends here.
Yeah.
Just people that I mean. I have a group of friends. We call ourselves the Fab Five. There's
Nice.
Unfortunately, there's only 4 of us. 3 years ago, yesterday, we lost our chief.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you. But that was a Fab Five. I met those guys between the ages of 6 and 8.
Wow.
And we're still friends. I mean,
Beautiful.
in each other's weddings, and know everybody. I'm godfather to a couple of kids and things like that. So, I mean, I to my detriment, for many years, I thought I don't need any more friends. I got these guys.
Yeah, I think that's very special. I've got buddies of mine that I grew up with, and we're texty, and every time I talk to them, it's been like I talked to them yesterday, but we're geographically split. Like, we're everywhere.
Yeah.
And there's an interesting culture I think you create for yourself, where you have a network of support that starts with family, starts with old friends. And these friends have known you when you're a child. They know you when you're a young adult. They know you in middle years. They'll know you as you guys get older, hopefully. And you get a sense of perspective of who those people are. And, you know them deeply. And if you met now face to face, you may not be friends, but because of that history, you stay connected in a pretty deep way.
Yeah, there's no question about it. I mean, kind of the follow up to that, to the Fab Five, is that when we lived in Colorado, my wife made a number of really good friends, and she's still in contact with them, and I didn't. I really didn't. I don't know
Well,
why.
that doesn't surprise me, because you didn't know how, because you didn't need to. You had a built-in friend network growing up.
That's an incredibly interesting and insightful thought, and I think you're right. But I think also I thought I'll be back in Indiana someday. My buddies are there, and I'm not going to cheat on them over here, you know, in a weird, stupid way. That's a little bit of what I thought, but I have to say, moving to Indianapolis, and it'll be 16 years that we've lived in Indianapolis next month. I've got like 5 guys here that are
Mm-hmm.
super, super close, and you know, we're just really good friends. I know I can. I mean, I have literally called one of them at 3 o'clock in the morning and said, "I'm at the airport and I can't get home.
Sure.
I'll be there in 25 minutes."
Absolutely. Of
You
course.
know, so I think this is kind of a bookendish in my mind set of friends that I have now developed, and I'm not saying that first group when I was 6 years old I'm cutting off in any way whatsoever. I mean, we're still close, but I don't see those guys. They're 3 hours away. I don't see them that
Sure.
often. We text a lot, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, bitch and moan about life. But the other guys I see almost every week. So
Absolutely.
the ones that are here, so it's very interesting to me. That that's come about now, and I really have opened up. Something in me has opened up and allowed that to happen.
That's wonderful. That it's an interesting thing where when you grew up and you had a built-in family, you couldn't get away from people. There were so many around all the time,
That's
right?
true.
You're like, I don't have room for
Not
someone
again.
else, right? And then as you get older, though, seeking out, friends that are dispositionally, like-minded, perhaps, or there's a connection that you get. And I've got a group of buddies, and we're celebrating our 15th year working out together. So we work out, we got about 18, 20 guys on this text thread and stuff like that.
Wow.
And for us as men, as we get older, what I know to be true unequivocally is that I'm a better man and I'm a better father because I'm friends with these guys.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I think that pushes forward generationally to where I'm a better dad to my daughters, and in turn, my daughters will be better mothers to their children because of my friends. And so the impact of these friends are not just within my life; it's generational, and it expands outwards. So it both in breadth outwards to the people and relationships we have, and in depth and for multiple generations. My hunch is that that's similar to you and what you've experienced. I bet you're a better guy because of your friends.
There's no question about it. There's absolutely no question about it. And both of those groups, I will say, have influenced me and made me a heck of a lot better. I, I, I'm on second marriage. I got married when I was, I don't know, what was I, 36 or 38 for the second time, and had my daughter, 36, I guess, and got my daughter was born when I was 40.
Okay.
So when when we, when I was single again in my, early 30s, and I was calling and living in my hometown, and calling up these 5 guys on a random Tuesday night and say, "Hey, let's go drink. Come on, let's hit the bars. It's like, dime beer night." And they're like, "Well, I can't go out. I got 3 kids. I got 3 kids at home.
Bath time is at 6:30.
Exactly.
Pajama time is at 7:15. Lights out 7:30, bro. Can't do it. Then after that, I got dishes, and then we got laundry, and
I kid you not, the first time we brought my daughter back home, and all that group of friends met her, I went to every one of those wives and I said, "I'm sorry.
nice.
I am sorry. I did not get it at all.
Right.
Now I know when I'm rocking my daughter to sleep at 7:15 and I fall asleep in the rocking chair before she does." Yeah, I get it now. I get why you guys weren't hitting the bars with me, back in the day.
That is really cool. So with your cohort, you were an older father.
Absolutely, yeah.
So what do you think, if you look back, what did you learn from them as you approached your own fatherhood?
Oh, great question. I think it was just dedication. I think it was more self-sacrifice because you know, it did not. I wasn't so blind to it that I missed what they were doing for their families, and I
Mm-hmm.
know a couple of them had like you know big time job opportunities, you know, moving out of Indiana and things, and they looked at their surroundings and they looked at their you know the way they were settled and their families and their kids and things and stayed put.
Oh, interesting.
That really I think resonated with me when you know we were in that position of saying, okay, do we want to fly in the grandparents once a year and see their granddaughter, or do we want to get closer to them? So you know, it's a couple-hour car ride, and you know,
Mm-hmm.
it's
It's
multiple times
doable.
per year. Yeah, it became much more doable. So, yeah, it was all of those guys that you know my childhood group and the current group, by the way, have all made me a better person and a better dad and a better husband too. By the way, I
Sure.
mean,
You
just
know, it is interesting when you know, I think that all men look for models of manhood around, and our first model of manhood is either your father, or if your father's not around, some manhood representation of a father figure, whether that's an uncle or a stepdad or whatever that is. But it's interesting when we get older. I find that I look for models of manhood now for folks in my cohort, for my generation, right? What are they doing, and how can I learn from them? Um, I think what's interesting is that you talk about this group creating, you know, and you yearning for that kind of stability and cohort that you had when you grew up, to surround your family with people and loved ones in proximity to where you are.
yeah. I all you know the current group. We met because of our kids. They went.
Hmm.
Our kids all were in the same class in the same parochial school, and we went to the same church. And you know, we were in the Knights of Columbus together, and all of that stuff. We
Sure.
just had all these common interests and experiences, and we sort of just found each other. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you
Yeah.
size up a room, or hey, I'm a salesman, right? I read the room 100% of the time, and yeah, like, oh, okay, I get that guy. I get
You
that
know,
guy.
so that's interesting. You mentioned parochial school, the church, and Knights of Columbus. Has your Catholic and local church been a real binding agent for you in terms of creating your community?
No doubt, absolutely, 100%.
Okay.
Um, you know, what I told my daughter when she got into high school was exactly what my mom told me, and um, through high school, you're going to church every weekend. You're gonna, you know, you're going to be a participating, active Catholic. After high school, it's on you.
Sure.
But think about the you know the friends that you have and the community that you've developed, you know, outside of you know the 63 first cousins who are all Catholic, by the way, anyway.
Sure.
um you know, what is the genesis of that group of people? Well, it was my church, it was my
Sure.
parish, you know,
Hmm.
those are my friends. And so those kind of things, that's why I told my daughter, I'm like, hey, you know, well, she didn't have much of a choice, by the way. She went to a Catholic high school too. So you know, she right now not attending church.
Sure.
Okay, you're in college, you're
Yeah.
going to do what you want to do. But again, think about all of your friends, think about your group, think about the community, and you use that word, and it's quite accurate. That has, you know, bubbled up around you, embraced you, and and helped you and supported you in so many ways throughout your life to this point, and it all came from that.
Yeah. You know, I think that there is a nationally there's a growing trend over the last X number of years of a decline in church attendance.
Oh, absolutely,
The
yeah,
the
surely.
recent studies have indicated there's a kind of a smaller resurgence of church attendance as it relates to young men, not young women. and young men are attending non-denominational churches a little bit more to kind of define that cohort, to find that place. And what I think is so interesting is kind of generationally where you had these 60s, 70s, 80s where maybe there was a pushback or a backlash against going to church, where those kids who were forced to go to church were now parents and they were not going to do that at all.
Yeah.
I wonder if the pendulum swings a little bit, or if it's maybe just isolated in communities, because one of the things that, church offers, besides all of the spiritual thoughts and development that can happen, is that it does create community, and it creates for the child and a family an instant cohort of people who are looking after them. It's that maybe a sports team doesn't, or a school doesn't.
Yeah, it's structure and discipline. Structure and discipline. The Catholic Church is all about ritual, and most are, but it gives you a grounding, I think. And trust me, I have my issues with the Catholic Church,
sure.
and in particular, some things that have happened in our parish and our diocese,
sure.
and things that I do not like. Let's be clear. But the fact that it does bring that community together,
right,
of shared beliefs in a lot of ways. I mean, I respect that, and I revere that.
Sure. I love that word, Doug, revering, because that implies a deep respect. It implies the understanding of its impact on you in terms of how you view the world, and shape your own life and shape the life of your family. It's an interesting thing too, where a good friend of mine, who was on the episode, on one of the episodes earlier, was raised in a big Catholic family, and that was part of his life. And he said, I love this perspective that he had. He goes, I don't know how to separate my faith from the church that is the structure within the faith. He goes, I don't know how to do that. It's kind of linked together. Where I was curious, because I said, okay, well, there's religion, which is like the big, millions and millions and millions of people are either Buddhists or Christians or Hindus or Muslims or Jewish or whatever, right? The big religions. And then you have church, which is the local communities. And then you have faith, which is all individual. And that bridge in the middle, the church, provides, so much of like a bind, right? A connection, a community. That's what it does. It pulls people together. And I think it's interesting you talk about the discipline and the ritual. Whereas a lot of the non-denominational churches, a person who's dear to me said, it's just kind of I'm not really interested in a rock concert and a motivational speech. I want something a little bit more. And I think that still in 2024, the Catholic rituals provides a little bit more in terms of depth and history than some of the other churches that have sprung up.
I agree with you. And, the company that I worked for is deeply involved and entrenched in Christian ministry, and a lot of it Baptist, but others as well. And I think Baptists fall into this mold too. It's like, you pretty much can. The church that I went to, the mass that I went to when I was in grade school, is the same mass that's being said today. Right. And I really like that.
Mm-hmm. One of a very good friend of mine, one of my Ursling runners, we call him the DA because he's a deacon at one of our churches, Deacon Adam. He went to Indianapolis for the
ecumenical.
The ecumenical.
This summer.
This summer. And he said it was absolutely profound. He said that not only walking through the streets of Indianapolis, but then when they got into the dome, there was a moment where everybody was quiet. And he said, the whole arena, imagine being in a place with 60,000 people, and they were silent.
My sister attended that as well.
Okay.
I lovingly call my sister Super Catholic. mean, she is super Catholic, you know what I
Right.
mean? And as a matter of fact, she fulfilled one of her dreams a couple years ago, and opened a Catholic bookstore.
Oh, wow.
And it's books and religious articles and
Okay.
you know, jewelry, things of that like that. And she's doing very well, thank God. But she attended that same thing, and she stayed here at my house because I'm only 20 minutes away.
Sure.
And like I think it was 3 days,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't even know it was going on. That's how bad I am. I
That's
mean, she had
hilarious.
to tell me, I'm coming down for this. I'm like,
That
what?
is hilarious.
Like, oh my God, yeah, people walked here from Portland, Oregon
Right. There
to
were
be a part of it.
pilgrimage.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
what? Why would they do that? Anyway, so she came back every day, and she was just like in a daze about how cool it was and everything. And
Yeah.
I'm afraid it would have been lost on me. Maybe not. Maybe not. I'm not that shallow. But yeah, it was a very, very big deal, and there were tens and ten, maybe 100,000 people.
Yeah. It was
Participating.
huge. So I guess, one question I have now, you said your daughter may or may not be attending church. It's her
Yeah.
deal. But how do you think that, being a Catholic and whether how rigid you adhere to the structures, I'm just curious. That makes no difference to me how you enact your own Catholicism. But I'm wondering, how did it impact both your sonhood to your mom and now your fatherhood to your daughter?
That's a great question. Well, as a good Catholic kid, I always wanted to please my mom.
Okay.
So, I felt a responsibility, I would say, for a long time to participate in the Catholic lifestyle. I think that's an accurate representation of it. But an interesting thing happened. So, like my daughter, I stopped going to church after, I think I went one time when I was in, other than Christmas and Easter, let's say I
Sure.
went one time when I was in college, away from home, maybe twice. I don't know. But then in my in my first marriage, got married in a huge Catholic wedding, like
Okay.
stupid big. But
that didn't work.
That didn't work. And I.
How many years were you married for your first marriage, if I can ask?
5
Okay.
years. 3 of them relatively happily. I think, at least I was happy. She might have something else to say about that. But I would, after when I got divorced, probably, before that actually, because even when I was still in the first marriage, we went to church pretty often. But I really went back to church after I got divorced.
Okay.
Just as a single 30-something dude. Was I searching for something in life, some grounding in life? Yeah, sure.
Absolutely.
I was. And going back to mass and seeing all those people at 5:30 on Saturday that you saw when you were a kid and everything, was a lifeline that I needed, and it helped. It did help.
Mm-hmm.
I did not get my marriage annulled or any of that garbage. Don't believe in it. Wasn't going to pay, whatever the church wanted me to pay to do it. So my second marriage, I was not allowed to get married in the Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife wasn't Catholic anyway. Ironically, I had several friends that were priests, and they were like, "Yeah, man, I would love to do this, but I, officiate your marriage, but I can't." So anyway, my wife actually went through what's it called? She converted to Catholicism.
Oh, interesting.
And I felt really, I felt like I felt like that was just an incredible gift from her to me.
Yeah.
Because I knew I wanted my daughter to be Catholic. I knew I
Yeah.
wanted her to go to Catholic school. I wanted her to
Hmm.
have those same experiences, and it would just be easier if my wife were Catholic
Sure.
as well. And she did, and she bought in, and it was just a grounding experience. It brought us all closer,
Hmm.
and like I said, for all those reasons we talked about before, this just big, the community became one, if you will,
Yeah.
and we all benefited from it. Did I answer your question somewhere? I don't even know. I
Yeah,
got lost.
you did. No, I think that was beautiful because the way I read that is, the traditions that your mom created within the family and you as son understanding the values of those traditions, because some people don't. Some people rebel against those traditions. Some people say, gosh, it was awful and I feel stifled and I have to get away from my family. Whereas I think, you felt the value and the embrace of what it could be to be a part of a very large family. And we're all going to church. All 63 of us, all your cousins are going to church. Everyone's going in.
You
And
know what, Chris, I have to credit my mom because she was a realist and she was a pragmatist, and she just, it wasn't a thing like you're going to church, God damn it.
right.
Yeah, and I hope we can cuss on this.
We can cuss. It's
Okay,
fine. I
all
love it
right.
that you say the word cuss. I think that's so charming.
So thank you. It's very Midwestern of me, isn't it? Um, my mom knew how to manage us, and
Interesting.
I'm the youngest of three. I have an
Hmm.
older sister, middle brother. I'm the youngest. My brother and I are Irish twins. There's less than 1 year between us.
Roger.
13 days short of a year. So she just knew how, like I said, she knew how to manage us, and she knew how to manage us as it relates to our spiritual growth and our
Hmm.
participation in the Catholic Church. I used to
Hmm.
think my mom was super Catholic, but then my sister, I mean,
Sister
really became,
really,
yeah,
really leaned
she
in.
surpassed. My mom even calls my sister super Catholic now.
Can I ask, is your mom still alive?
She is, yeah,
That's
80. She'll
wonderful.
be 86 in August. Yeah. And
Wonderful.
I'm leaving out my dad too. My dad was a willing accomplice in all of this, but was not the taskmaster,
The driver and the
not the
manager.
driver. Taskmaster is not the
Yeah.
right description of my
Yeah.
mom. She was the manager. She was,
Yeah, she managed the household. It's an interesting thing where if I can ask, did your mom work in a professional career outside the home?
yeah, she did. My mom was a registered nurse. At
Perfect.
one time, up until a few years ago, she held an active license. She was the second oldest active license in the state of Indiana.
Th-
Um, but
Good on her. That's
oh yeah,
astonishing.
yeah, she like retired 4 times. But I will say that, so like the last 30 years of her career, she worked in the administrative side.
Sure.
So yeah,
But it's interesting though is the idea of homemaking and home management is such an important skill to manage like these kids and you said something and touched on it briefly. I'd like to get back to it. You talked about your mom kind of managing not only the interaction with the community but your faith journey as well and kind of like spiritually. Where are you? Do you think about your faith journey now? And can you place yourself kind of where you are now that you're a little bit older and you can look back on your Catholic upbringing and you've got a daughter who may not be attending church, but temporarily probably.
yeah,
But do you think about your faith journey at all?
not that much. And
Okay.
I'm being honest with you right now. I'm in a little bit of a I'm floating around a little bit right now, wondering where my place is.
Hmm.
I mentioned earlier I have my differences with the Catholic Church, and some things happened here locally in our parish and in our diocese, which just did not seem fair nor right in my
Hmm.
world, in my Catholic upbringing, I might add.
Hmm.
And for that reason, my participation has drastically dropped off in the last year, 18 months. And
And, and not just participation, it seems like your spiritual engagement, your mental
yeah,
engagement.
yes and no.
Hmm.
Oh, gosh, I always think I read this. biography of Mother Teresa. I don't know, 15 years ago, and Mother Teresa said, someone asked her about her, her just, titanium clad faith, and she was like, absolutely not. We all have doubts.
Sure.
If you believe the Bible, Jesus doubted his, his role and his, and his father and all that. So I have my doubts. My daughter likes to debate me on this every once in a while.
As she should. As a 19-year-old, if she's not debating her parents, then come on, when are you going to do it?
Right, yeah. So I would say I'm waffling a little bit about where I am in my faith, and will it return? I don't feel it right now. I'll be honest with you. I don't feel it.
Yeah. Does it scare you?
A little bit. I'm a little detached from, those things that I've told you have absolutely lent structure and discipline to my life. And right now I am definitely floating out there. And I can't see myself going to another church. I can't, because I still believe.
Sure.
But at the same time, I'm pissed at those assholes.
Right.
So what do? You be a good person. You just be a good person.
We'll be right back. Right. And but also too, that's that interesting, I think planal shift, if I'm messing it up, but there's a different plane of faith versus church, right? Yeah. And that you can still have, I think, a Catholic faith, but the church that you're in, you're like, you're an a-hole or you're a human, then, because like it or not, church is populated by humans, right? And we're gonna have personalities and make mistakes and say things and do things and stuff.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I still believe? Yep. Am I going to put myself in that box again? That box of what the Catholic Church says I should believe right now, and just swallow it, dude? I don't think so, but that could change.
It could change, but I think what's interesting about that, Doug, is that you're willing to be honest with yourself about it.
Yeah.
Here you are approaching 60 years old, where you've literally had a lifetime of devotional faith to the Catholic Church. And I'm sure there were moments where you were questioning, but as you get older, you hope that you understand yourself a little bit more, and you hope that you develop, I don't know, for lack of a better phrase, kind of rules of engagement that you have with the world. Things that you can tolerate and not tolerate. Things that you... Go ahead.
At this point, I am pretty sure I know who I am. I know what I'm capable of and what I'm not capable of. I find myself more now, Chris, saying, I'm not going to do that. I'm almost 60. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to participate in that. I am not going to the ranting, I don't even know I don't even know how to say this, but like people I might have put up with, and I'm not being crotchety. I'm just like, and I'm not going to be, people I would have put up with when I was younger. I just disassociate with myself from them now. I'm not interested in it. It's not worth it. In the old days, maybe I would have debated them. Maybe I would have been amused by them. Now, I don't care.
Right. It's interesting. You're not going to waste the energy, right? There's energy and time, and these are finite resources. And I think when you're a little bit older, you appreciate the finite time a little bit more, a little bit differently. A friend of
Yeah.
mine that I reconnected with, he's actually on, he's episode 3 on this podcast. He asked me, after I hadn't seen him in years, decades, he said, hey, hey, Chris, what's important to you? And I was like, that's a great question. What's important to me? I was like,
Yeah.
my time. My time is important, right? And to
Yeah.
be with people that either drain you or don't provide something that you want, and you have a choice, and you kind of know that a little bit better now than you did when you were younger,
Yeah.
and you can make those distinctions. So one question that I would have for you now is, now that you're being a little bit more discerning, what are you learning from the people that you're pulling into your life?
That's a great question too, and I think I'm learning that you can be. I'm I am the youngest of 3, as I've established earlier. I'm the manager.
Interesting.
I'm the string puller, and I'm learning I don't have to do that. In fact, it's better if I don't. I'm learning more I think, to be just a participant. There is a part of me that has always been, if you're gonna be involved, you might as well be in charge. President of the HOA, leader of the Knights of Columbus, all the, if you're gonna do it, you might as well be the shot caller. And now I'm a little bit more. I'm definitely more comfortable being an Indian instead of the chief.
That is
And,
really interesting.
and I'm also more comfortable as an Indian to say, nah, I'm not going to help you guys out. I'm not going to participate. You're not doing it the way I want, so I'll just go about my way. Now, I wouldn't say that, but I'd be like, yeah, no, I'm unavailable. I was a part of the night. I am Knights of Columbus, and those are the organizations, volunteer organizations, always work like this, where there's 147 members and 8 guys do everything.
That's right.
8 people are in charge of every single thing, and they'd show up, and I was one of those 8 for a number of years, and I found it tremendously satisfying. I loved it. It was great. And now it's not a part of my life.
Sure. It's a funny thing that you say that. I was thinking about this. I was looking at some statistics about the income inequality, not only in America, but globally. And there was a really startling statistic that, 85 people in the world have as much wealth as about 3 billion people, which is astonishing, somewhat horrifying.
Terrifying.
But I also wonder too, part of me wonders, is that just the natural law? Because, in business, everyone talks about the 80-20 rule, right? 80% of your revenue comes 20%. You just talked about the 80-20 rule with the Knights of Columbus volunteering. 8 guys out of 160 do 80, 2% of the guys do 90% of the work, right? And I've seen this with other volunteer organizations and the like. And as you start thinking, now that we're a little bit older and we can look back, and you're changing some of the participation levels, or you're changing your thinking, or changing the way you're doing things, right? So you are going through a transition now.
Yeah.
Are you talking about your transition with your daughter at all? Because she's, of course, going through her own transitions. Are you disclosing that you're transitioning too?
No, I'm not. And that's a very interesting thought too. And I mean, maybe she has observed it. We've not discussed it. But I think that is something, she'll be home next week for holiday break. And, that's something I probably will talk to her about. Like, she certainly heard me say, hey, I'm almost 60. I ain't doing that. I don't care. I ain't doing that.
But she didn't know you when you were 30.
Yeah, right.
She didn't know you when you were 40, so she doesn't have the context.
True. She knows me when I was 50 though, and I was pretty active then.
Hmm.
I'm a project guy. I've always got something going on around the house, and
Nice.
it used to be that I would, on Saturday morning, I work in my yard. I love my yard's got to be pristine, and it is, by the way. Um,
Nice.
so uh, I would, cut the grass, rake the leaves, clean the gutters. I would have 15 different projects. The last one being wash the car because you're going out to dinner on Saturday night. Car's got
Right.
to be clean.
Right.
Um, Now, if I have a list of 5 things, if I get 2 of those done, it's a good day. I mean, I can still do it all, but I
Right.
just don't do it at the pace I once had, and I'm recognizing that more and more. That and I do not climb ladders anymore.
Don't climb ladders. I absolutely agree with you. Do you think that that's changed because your daughter's now in college and not living with you? That maybe you had to do some of these things to show her how to make a life?
No, I never thought about it that way.
Okay.
But we have had this discussion. Why does everything have to be clean? Why does the car have to be spotless? Why? I'm like, well, I want your mom's car because I want your mom's car clean because I love and respect her and I want her to drive a clean vehicle. And I want the house to be clean because I love and respect you. And I want this house to be your home and comfortable. And when it's cluttered and messy and dusty and whatever, that's not comfortable. Well, I don't care. I'm like, yeah, I do.
Right. Right. I
when,
do.
when dad's happy, it makes
Well,
the
yeah,
house easier to live in.
sure, but also too, I think that we had those exact same conversations with our kids, where my wife really does a nice job of managing the house and beautiful job of keeping the house clean and everything like that. And they're like, nobody cares except you. But it's like, well, but to create a home environment that you feel comfortable in and that you enjoy every day, and that it's an everyday pleasure to live where you live and to try to make it so that you love where you live, right? And love the environment where you live
That's
in.
right. That is so important because I want her forever to be able to come back to this home, whether it's this house or some house elsewhere, where her mother and I are. I want her to come back and know, oh, I I I can take it all off. I
Right.
can take off all the pressure. I can take off all the stress. I can forget about everything else because inside this walls, everything's 100% golden.
Safe and sanctuary. It's interesting to try to.
Sanctuary,
It's a sanctuary,
sanctuary.
right? And that's I think what we had talked about when we were raising our kids, is that we wanted home to be a sanctuary outside the world. And my wife in particular treats this like a sanctuary. It's like this protective shield that's around the house, and we don't let that stuff into house, right?
Yeah.
In house is protected space. um is that something that you grew up with? Were your parents like that about home, or is this something that you just created with your wife yourself?
No, and I'm glad you asked that question because the conversation guide that you provided, by the way, was so thought provoking. I read these questions to my wife and she's like, "Oh my God, that's a great question."
Oh,
Like,
good.
I want to hear the answer to it. What is wrong with you? But here's what it came down to. And Chris, I thought about this for over a week now. The worst thing you can do, or the worst thing I could ever do, would be disappoint my parents. And the
Hmm.
number one thing to disappoint my dad is be lazy.
Wow.
And my dad is the hardest working guy I've ever seen in my life. I mean, he was owned his own small business, had a retail component. Literally was open 7 days a week for like 9 months out of the year. Worked every day. I mean, he was just an incredibly hard worker until one day when he when he was older and he was like, "Yeah, I'm over this. thank God he finally got to that point before he dropped dead. But
Mm-hmm.
being lazy is the worst possible thing you can be. I even think like you could, uh, if you're going to be a criminal, be a great criminal. Just don't be lazy. You
Just
know what
don't
I
be
mean?
lazy.
So
That's really stuck with you.
oh my God, I cannot have I mean I have a whiteboard in my garage with all my projects aligned, and this cars here, each car broken out, what needs to be done with it, the house, what do you got to do here, the yard, all of it, because I I can't stop. you know when you sit down for a while, you tend to sit down for a longer while, and
Yeah.
I just can't do that. I have to be go my daughter says, oh, you're a perfectionist. I'm not a perfectionist. I'm detail oriented.
Sure. Well,
I
but that's
notice
important
stuff.
too. You notice stuff, and what's interesting to me is the older I get, the more I appreciate craft, right? Just craft of
Absolutely.
stuff, like high quality, intentional actions, and so, but I also think there is a craft to homemaking that a lot of people don't appreciate. And in the kind of the backlash 70s, a lot of folks would say, oh, it's too crazy, it's oppressive, it's the man forcing you down. But my wife in particular loves the craft of homemaking, and I also really, as I've gotten older, really appreciate the domestic arts a lot.
Hmm.
And it's an interesting thing because the idea of action and versus inaction, again goes back to natural law. Newton's law states that objects in motion tend to stay in
Stay in
motion,
motion.
objects at rest stay in rest, right? And that those things and those people who don't actively engage have a harder time actively engaging.
No doubt. There's absolutely no doubt to that. And I have a tremendous sense of satisfaction at
Uh-huh.
when I complete a project, when
Sure.
and
I think it's
something's
also
done.
important for men to do that. I just posted a TikTok video, so I'll send you a video because you'll appreciate it. I recently redid my floors, and so
Awesome.
right, and I built our years ago, a couple summers ago. I took out our staircase. It's a 2-story house, so it was the original staircase. So I took all of that out and replaced the staircase, like the stair
Wow,
rails,
that's
and
serious carpentry right there.
it was,
That
and
is serious
and
stuff.
but YouTube was awesome, and it took a long time, but and I did it super slow, but man, it worked out great. I mean, used all the power tools and used even a winch wrench, which is you go in and you torque the. I mean, it's really intense stuff. Like this
I
screw
love
was
it.
almost the width of a quarter, right?
Oh.
To drive it in, and then you had
Mhm.
to tighten it in, and to hold the post and the rail. I mean, all that stuff just had to be spot on. The angles had to be perfect, right? And the shoe rails and everything. And so going through that, though, I think it's really good for men in particular to build shit,
Yeah.
right? To
Yep.
know how to build shit and to work
Yeah.
on your hands and work with your stuff, and know that you can make something, even within your home. And I think might be true with women too, but man, for men, I think it's so critical. And
I do
uh,
too. I mean, I absolutely do. I just, like I said, I just get an incredible sense of satisfaction out of
mm-hmm.
it. But it's also there is no small element is the part where I want I want my wife and daughter to live in a nice house in a nice neighborhood and drive a nice
Yeah,
car
clean
and go to
cars,
good
sure.
schools and all that stuff. And I work as hard in my career as I do on all of my projects everywhere
Mm-hmm.
else. So all of that equals up into the definition of me.
Yeah.
And I, I don't know. I'm pretty happy with myself right now. I feel pretty good.
You should. Well, you should. And you wish that with all men and
Yeah.
anybody, men and women too. But one of the things that you wish for is that you're happy with yourself. Like, yeah, I've got flaws. Everyone
Oh,
has
100%. Yeah.
everyone has flaws. But you know what? Uh, if if I was asked to trade places with anybody, I wouldn't. I would come back to me,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, I've done some incredibly dumb-ass things in my life and my career, but I learned from them.
Yeah.
I tried not to repeat them, you know.
So
I
so so now that you know you've got a really good I love this, Doug, because you mentioned that you've got a really good handle of yourself, of who you are and who you're not. What are you hoping for the next chapters of your life, right? You'll probably live to be 100, 110.
Oh,
Um,
I like how you think. Maybe.
Natch, Natch. But it's an interesting stage now because the next 30, 40 years, you've got the perspective of the past, knowing who you are, and now knowing who you are. What are you see as these next chapters? Do you have a vision of your life over the next decades?
I'm wrestling with that. I'm wrestling with it right now,
Hmm.
and I super enjoy my work. And that's an element we should talk about too. I don't know how many hours we have here.
As long as
Um,
you want.
we've got these. I've got these friends from when I was 6. I've got these friends that I met when I was 40, and then I've got you. I've got several other like really close friends from business,
Through
from my
business,
career.
right?
People I've
Right.
known for 30 years that I've stayed at their house. They've stayed at my house. I've been to their wedding. I know their kids from, all this stuff. And that's another group of people that have really, I mean, are super important to me.
Very important. That is the one thing that surprises me and that I did not anticipate going into the workforce in the career world is how beautiful the relationships could be with the people that you work with.
Yes. And very, very fulfilling. I am I, besides a work ethic, which I got from my parents,
Mm-hmm.
my second strongest trait is curiosity.
Love it.
No doubt I'm interested in what's next.
Yeah.
What is next? What is next in life? What is next in business and in my career? And that to the point of your question, I work in the TV business. It's so much fun and it's so crazy and chaotic right now.
Mm-hmm.
I can't take my eyes off of it. I really
Wonderful.
can't.
That is great.
So, like, I wanted to keep doing this. Our company, by the way, has employs an 84-year-old man.
Yes.
So, I'm trying
It's too
to,
much fun.
yeah, I'm trying to put out there. I'm here for the long term. Um, about a year ago, I think it was close to a year ago. I sat down with my boss, who's 7 years younger than me, 6 years, I guess. And she wanted to know what my personal, professional, and financial goals are, so
Sounds
that
like
we could,
someone I know who did that. Go
yeah,
for it.
so you
Uh-huh.
could align what you
Mm-hmm.
want to do. What are your plans? And she said, "When are you going to retire?" I said, and I not I mean it was barely out of her mouth. I said, "I'm never going to retire. What are you talking about?"
That's awesome.
And then I kid you not, I work. I was in our Scottsdale office, and I flew home. And the guy that picks me up at 1 o'clock in the morning picked me up at 1 o'clock in the morning, my friend. And I said, I recounted that, and I said, I can't stop thinking about retiring. Wouldn't that be great? And at that time, he was a few months away from retiring, and from a totally different career, by the way. And I thought about it so hard. I was like, God, I think I could make this work, financially,
Mm-hmm.
but I would miss it. I mean, I would miss it and I would be miserable.
Yeah, well, you're a man of action, and so I think that there wouldn't be enough home projects to fill a day.
Yeah, yeah,
At
yeah,
some point you rip up the lawn just so you could replace the lawn.
yeah,
But I think that if you're in a stimulating environment, and there's a certain, for those who are privileged to have a career that's more of a knowledge work kind of
yeah,
career. Um, this is one of the, I think, most exciting times to be engaged with that because of the rapid rate of change. And if you are of a curious nature, there's no shortage of things to be curious about because of all the
absolutely, yeah,
changes. So I've met some people who retired, and some of them have handled it really well, and they're like, this is the bomb, I love it. um, there are others though who I've seen um, get dumber. They
yeah,
just they start missing things. They can't complete sentences the way they used to. They're not as sharp as they might have been. It's like, they're smoking pot every day, but I know they haven't been. So I'm like,
yeah,
does that mean because you haven't been working, you haven't been exercising your mind? And the studies that I read, and the more books I read about aging, the idea of keeping your mind active is such a critical part of offsetting dementia and Alzheimer's and all that stuff.
yeah. I cannot. So answer your question. What's next? I can't go more than 3 or 4 years out at this point. I should be, but I'm not.
That's
But
fine.
I just think there's too many more things I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
There's too many more things I want to learn and be involved with, and I think I can still do some good in the industry. I think I have things to offer. A conference that you and I attend
Mm-hmm.
together in San Diego, which you're a gracious host every year. Um, I've had people come up to me and say, "Hey, some players in our business," and they've said, "Hey, you know what? You were always great to us when we were nobodies, when we didn't know anything. You always had good advice." And I was gobsmacked that they would say that, but they were like really earnest, and it felt so good. And I feel like even on that front, I have things that I can share, and I've learned, and
You
I know.
give.
Um, and not the least of which is, my daughter's asked me about what I do, and is there a role for her in this business
Sure.
someplace? And there is, by the way. I mean, she is a super smart kid, and it's going to be different than the way I came up through this business, and
Mm-hmm.
the things that were, I used onion skin fax paper, when I started.
Right.
Um, but there's a place for there's always a place for curious, smart people.
Yeah, no, I
Always.
agree. And I think that, the idea of, I mean, that's the Walt Whitman, Ted Lasso thing, always be curious, right? Because I think that helps you not only develop as a person, but I think I have all these theories I can't prove. Here's another one.
Let's hear it. Me too.
That the more curious you are, your the greater capacity you have to give to someone else, because you're going to learn something that they might not have learned, and you can give them something new that came through you because of your curiosity. Does that
I
make
think,
sense?
yeah, because I think if you think there's a lot out there that you don't know, you're always interested in learning something from somebody else. And you don't spend a lot of time judging that person or deciding, what their value is based on what their income might be. I just think
Right.
that I just try and take people as they come. And I think everyone has something to offer.
Yeah, I love that. I think everybody does have something to offer, and you know the the older I get, the you talked about some people that I don't want to, don't need to engage, etc. I've become a little bit more tolerant. It doesn't mean that I want to engage with other people, but I've become much more tolerant and accepting of people who have radically different perspectives than I do. And I've been working very hard to be not just open-minded, but open-hearted about people with whom I might disagree on some fundamental things. And it's really helped me.
I will say this: I have, and I'm not backing away from my comment that I disengage with people.
Sure.
That I just don't want anything to do with, and that's a type of person that has something to offer. I'm just not willing to accept it, I guess.
Sure.
But I would say this: in this incredibly polarized political time, I'm somewhat the same, because I have very close friends who have diametrically opposed political views.
Mm-hmm.
And I am asking them right now, what did I miss? What am I missing here?
Right.
And I'm not saying, you're an idiot, you voted for her, or you're an idiot because you voted for him. I'm saying, what did I miss?
Right. And it's interesting too, because a lot of people say, well, don't talk about religion and politics, but I'm like, what's better to talk about? It's so fundamental, right? I mean, these are the, I want to ask you a personal questions. Well, fuck, those are the best questions to ask, right? Because then you can learn. I think that.
I think you got to be prepared for what that exchange might turn into right now.
Absolutely. And we have to get better at having good conversations with people so that you can do so respectfully. And I think that, so your daughter is 19, just right on that interesting cusp of young adulthood, and, first year she can vote, in the throes of everything. Do you guys have kitchen table conversations about how to have conversations with people you disagree with?
Not about how to have those conversations, but we have a lot of talk about those conversations. Mm-hmm. About, I guess it's more, I say to my daughter all the time, read the room.
That's good advice.
You've got to know, because when you read the room, you change the way you communicate in all manners, mm-hmm. verbal and nonverbal, to get your point across.
Yeah.
Right?
No, that's really good advice. Have you always read the room, Doug? Or
always.
Was that a learned?
Always.
Oh, always.
Always. I have always been that guy.
That's a good thing to be.
I'm very confident in that skill. And the times that I have, and I that's connected to your gut. And the times, every time that I haven't followed my gut, it has bit me in the ass.
That is interesting.
Always.
There are people who, I think that's it's enviable that you trust your instincts so well. I think some people don't trust their instincts as well as they should. I made some decisions where I thought my instincts were right and they were dead wrong. And so there are times when I'm like, I don't know if I trust my instinct, my initial instinct. And so what I have to do is I have to pull back so it's different. So it's interesting that you have such confidence in your instincts.
Yeah. I have confidence in my instincts. I'm not saying I always follow them. In fact, I haven't. That's how I know that my instincts and my gut are correct, because I've taken jobs for money when I knew it was not the right thing to do. And it was going to be a bad place to work, or they were not good people. And they never last, and you're miserable, and maybe you lose some weight because of the stress, but that's the only positive you have from it. But I've done that, and I knew going in, I'm like, I knew my gut was saying no, but I took the job.
You did it anyway, there's a book called
I did it anyway.
But you did it anyway. We do this to ourselves. There's a book called The Righteous Mind. It's by Jonathan Haidt. Have you heard of it?
I haven't.
It's brilliant. He's wonderful. And this is a wonderful book. I don't know him personally, so I don't know if he's wonderful, but he's a good thinker. And the book says The Righteous Mind. It says why good people are divided by religion and politics. And it talks about this why, like, what is this thing? And he has a really interesting analogy that I've never forgotten because it kind of talks about that instinct, right? He says that the human being is kind of like like a mahout who's riding an elephant. So in India, mahouts would be riding the elephant, and he says the elephant is your instinct, it's your gut, it's your value, and it's huge and lumbering and it moves. The mahout's trying to guide it, right? To kind of make sure you don't trample over people and move. But there's not that much control. You can't just move an elephant. And the mahout's kind of the mind, right? And so the thinking comes after the feeling. And so for you, like you said, I know this job isn't right, but I'm going to think my way through to the job.
Yeah. That's it. That's it. Exactly. I guess I'll say, at this age, I know.
That's a beautiful thing to know, right? And it makes decision making a lot easier if you just listen to your instincts.
Yeah.
If you listen to your instincts.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I have clarity.
That's wonderful. Clarity. That's the beautiful thing to have at this age. Is some people might call it wisdom.
Maybe.
Maybe. Yeah. So Doug, I have one final question, and this has been marvelous, and I really appreciate you taking the time.
I've enjoyed it.
Who is someone that you know that I don't know that I should know?
Oh, wow. Personal, professional?
Personal.
Do you want me to name him?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Dr. Keith Rooney.
Keith Rooney.
Dr. Keith Rooney, DDS. I've mentioned him several times throughout this this discussion. Recently retired dentist.
Okay.
Comes off as an old. By the way, he told me he's going to listen to this.
Awesome.
I talked to him earlier tonight. Want you to think he's just a good old country doctor, and he's frighteningly intelligent, well-read, generous to a fault.
Wonderful.
Great guy.
Wonderful. Hopefully I get the chance to meet him one day.
I hope you do too.
Well,
he just texted me. I kid you not. He just texted me right now.
He knows it's happening.
Is this going out live someplace?
It is not. It is not live streamed. I guarantee it. Well, you are wonderful, and you're a dear friend, and I love you.
Oh, you're great. I love you too, man.
And I really appreciate you being a part of this.
We have an interesting relationship.
We do.
We haven't been friends for very long, but I feel very close to you. And we've had some really great discussions. I just think we share a lot.
Well, I think, like I said, the beautiful thing about work that I was so surprised by is the opportunity to meet people who are interested in similar things from a field perspective. And then through all the people you meet, there's going to be a handful that kind of filter through that you're like, oh, I've known you for 1,000 years.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Mohotar, right. My friend for 1,000 years. It just is. I've known you forever. And I feel like, the way fate works or the universe works is that they pair up people and connect people that should be connected, because I know you've made my life richer just by knowing you a handful of years. And that our friendship will last now forever based on the handful of meetings and the handful of opportunities we've had to spend time with each other.
I totally agree 100%. I so enjoy spending time with you and talking with you.
Yeah. Likewise, my friend. Yeah. Well, this is wonderful. And maybe in the new year, we can do this again.
Anytime.
Fantastic.
Love it.
Have a great evening. Thank you.
You too. Thanks, Chris. See ya.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, oh my gosh. Doug Bogner, what a conversation. What a way to view the world and to kind of think back about how a community shaped his life. I mean, I thought that was so interesting, growing up with all that family. I didn't, right? I don't have that memory of a whole community that I was born into, right? Cousins, uncles, aunts, a church that everyone went through. But it was interesting that for him, it was such a grounding, anchoring experience growing up that way. It's like he didn't know a way to be a loneliness, right? He didn't know how to not be with the people that were part of his village, his tribe. He grew up with a tribe. And then as an adult, he made the conscious choice to go back to that tribe, pull his family into the tribe and bring it in. And it's such a powerful draw, I think, to be with your people. And it is interesting because sometimes as you get older and have your own thoughts, maybe you don't think like your people, but you're still of the people, right? You're still with your tribe. So what did we learn from Doug? We learned from Doug that it is okay to be in that community and not leave, just to be in it and to have it be a part of your whole life. And as you carry that into your own children, a part of their life too. And I think that's beautiful. There's just so many ways to live a life. And, some might say Doug had has a very conservative life, but it's rich and full and still filled with tons of meaning. And he's such a good thinker that he might seem conservative on the outside with his life, but he's got so much interesting and imaginative thinking in his private life. Wonderful story. Wonderful conversation. I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope you follow this podcast, and I'd love to have a conversation with you. Visit menfolkjourneys.com and book a conversation so we can hear from your story too. Thank you so much for listening. Word Bit Falarid.